April 30th, 1943. Off the coast of Spain, a body floats in the cold waters of the Mediterranean. Chained to his wrist is a leather briefcase containing documents that could change the course of World War II. But this is no ordinary casualty of war. This is the most audacious deception in military history. Operation Mincemeat. A dead man carrying false secrets, about to fool Adolf Hitler himself and save thousands of Allied lives in the invasion of Sicily. This is the true story of the corpse that changed everything. By early 1943, the Allies had won the North African campaign. Now they stood at a crossroads. Sicily was the obvious next target, the stepping stone to invading mainland Europe through Italy's soft underbelly. But that's precisely the problem. It was too obvious. German intelligence knew it. Hitler knew it. Sicily bristled with German and Italian defenses. Any invasion would face catastrophic losses. The Allies needed a miracle. They needed the Germans to look anywhere but Sicily. Winston Churchill himself demanded deception on a grand scale. The question wasn't whether to deceive the enemy, but how. Traditional military deceptions, fake radio traffic, dummy tanks, false troop movements wouldn't be enough this time. The stakes were too high. Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily, would involve 160,000 troops, 3,000 ships, and 4,000 aircraft. If the Germans were waiting, it would be a massacre. British intelligence needed something unprecedented, something the Germans would never suspect. Enter Ewan Montagu, a Royal Navy intelligence officer with a brilliant legal mind. As part of the 20 Committee, the secret organization running double agents against Germany, Montagu had already proven himself a master of deception. But his latest idea was macabre genius. What if they could plant false invasion plans on a dead body and make the Germans believe them? The Germans would never suspect that the British would go to such lengths. It was psychological warfare at its darkest. Montagu's partner in this audacious scheme was Charles Cholmondeley, an RAF flight lieutenant with an imagination as wild as his aristocratic pedigree. Together they would craft out the perfect deception. But first, they needed the most unusual requisition in military history: a dead body. Not just anybody. It had to be the right age, the right build, and crucially, it had to look like it had died from drowning or hypothermia after a plane crash at sea. Finding such a corpse would prove to be their first impossible challenge. The search led to the grim corridors of London mortuaries. Montagu and Cholmondeley needed cooperation from coroners and pathologists, asking questions that raised eyebrows even in wartime. The body couldn't show signs of violence or disease that would be obvious upon examination. It needed to be fresh enough to pass inspection, but the cause of death had to be ambiguous enough to match drowning. Finally, they found their man, Glyndwr Michael, a 34-year-old Welsh homeless man who had died from ingesting rat poison containing phosphorus. Glyndwr Michael had died alone and unnoticed in a London warehouse. In death, he would become the most important operative in British intelligence. The medical examiner Sir Bernard Spilsbury, England's most famous forensic pathologist, confirmed that the body's condition could pass for drowning. The phosphorus poisoning had caused fluid in the lungs, mimicking death by immersion. But there was a crucial caveat. The body had to reach the Spanish coast quickly. The longer the deception took, the more likely Spanish doctors would discover the truth. The clock was ticking. The nameless corpse needed an identity, a complete, verifiable identity that would withstand German scrutiny. They christened him Major William Martin of the Royal Marines. But a name wasn't enough. They needed to create a whole life, a life so detailed, so authentic, that even the suspicious minds of German intelligence would believe in him. Every detail mattered. One slip, one anachronism, one inconsistency, and the entire operation would collapse. The Germans would know Sicily was the real target. The team became forgers, creating identity documents that would pass the closest inspection. An identity card numbered 148228, a St. Christopher medallion, ticket stubs from a London theatre, loose change in his pockets, carefully aged and appropriate for 1943. They even included overdraft notices from Lloyd's Bank showing Major Martin was in debt, a humanizing detail that made him feel real. But the most important touch was personal. Love letters from a fictitious fiancée named Pam. These intimate notes would make Major Martin unforgettable to anyone who read them. The letters from Pam were masterpieces of misdirection. Written in feminine handwriting, they spoke of wedding plans, of a father's disapproval, of romantic longing. One letter mentioned Major Martin buying her an engagement ring. The intelligence team actually purchased a ring and included the receipt in his wallet, dated just days before his supposed death. They even placed a photograph of a young woman in his pocket, actually a staff member from MI5, who never knew her picture would end up on a corpse floating in the Atlantic. Every element had to tell the same story. This was a real man with a real life who had died in a tragic accident. Now came the true deception, the documents that would mislead Hitler himself. The briefcase chained to Major Martin's wrist contained letters between high-ranking officers that suggested the Allies were planning to invade Greece and Sardinia, with Sicily merely a feint to draw German attention. The letters had to be authentic enough to fool enemy intelligence, but not so obvious that they seemed planted. This required a delicate touch, too subtle, and the Germans might miss the point. Too obvious, and they'd smell a trap. The centerpiece was a personal letter from Lieutenant General Archibald Nye, Vice Chief of the Imperial General Staff, to General Harold Alexander, commanding Allied forces in North Africa. The letter made casual references to the cover target of Sicily and mentioned Sardinia as an actual objective. Nye mentioned that a divisional commander named Wilson would command forces targeting Greece. The letter was worded exactly as a genuine top-secret communication would be, not stating the deception boldly, but assuming both parties understood the real plan. This subtlety was crucial. German intelligence analysts were brilliant. They had to believe they were reading something they weren't meant to see. Another letter came from Vice Admiral Lord Louis Mountbatten, Chief of Combined Operations, introducing Major Martin to Admiral Andrew Cunningham in North Africa. Montague knew that Mountbatten's distinctive personality needed to shine through. The letter included Mountbatten's characteristic personal touches, jokes about sardines being off the menu, references to a shared acquaintance, the informal tone of old friends. These details weren't about the strategic deception itself, they were about authenticity. The Germans had to believe these letters were real, and nothing screams real like irrelevant personal details that serve no strategic purpose. With Major Martin fully created, the team faced a logistical nightmare. How to transport a decomposing body by submarine to the Spanish coast without the crew discovering the deception. The submarine chosen was HMS Seraph, commanded by Lieutenant Norman Jewell. For security reasons, even Jewell wasn't told the complete truth. He was told the body was that of a courier killed in an air raid, whose identity must be protected for intelligence reasons. The body was sealed in a specially designed canister filled with dry ice, marked "Handle with care optical instruments." The body, dressed in uniform and secured with the briefcase, was carefully placed in the canister. As dry ice evaporated, it would keep the body cold throughout the journey. But timing was critical. Too long in the canister and the body would be too well preserved, raising questions about how long it had been in the water. Too short, and decomposition would make Spanish authorities suspicious. The team calculated they had approximately 4 days from leaving Scotland to depositing the body off Huelva. Every hour mattered. On April 19, 1943, HMS Seraph slipped out of Holy Loch in Scotland, carrying the strangest cargo of the war. For 10 days, HMS Seraph cruised underwater towards Spain, the mysterious canister secured in the torpedo room. The submarine crew, curious about their unusual cargo, speculated endlessly. Some thought it was a secret weapon. Others believed it contained a spy being smuggled to a rendezvous. No one guessed the truth. Lieutenant Jewell maintained strict security, but even he felt the weight of the mission. Somewhere in London, Churchill himself awaited news. The submarine navigated carefully, avoiding German U-boats and patrol vessels. Failure was not an option. The target destination was carefully chosen, Huelva, a town on Spain's southern coast. Though officially neutral, Spain was sympathetic to Nazi Germany. Franco's regime maintained close ties with Hitler. More importantly, Huelva had an active German intelligence network. British intelligence knew that anything washed ashore in Huelva would quickly reach German hands. The local Spanish naval commander was known to cooperate with German agents. It was the perfect place for their deception to take root. As HMS Seraph approached Spanish waters on April 30th, the moment of truth arrived. At 4:30 a.m. on April 30th, 1943, HMS Seraph surfaced 1 mile off the coast of Huelva. The sea was calm, the tide incoming, crucial for ensuring the body would wash ashore rather than drift out to sea. Lieutenant Jewell and 4 officers brought the canister on deck. As they opened it, the dry ice vapor billowed into the morning air. There lay Major Martin, looking for all the world like a drowned courier. They inflated his Mae West life jacket, checked that the briefcase was properly secured to his wrist, and performed a brief, solemn ceremony. Lieutenant Jewell read Psalm 39. "I will keep my mouth with a bridle while the wicked is before me. I was dumb with silence. I held my peace even from good, and my sorrow was stirred." It was a fitting tribute for a man who would speak volumes through his silence. Then they gently lowered the body into the water. For a moment, Major Martin floated on the surface, the briefcase visible beside him. Then the submarine's engines roared to life, and HMS Seraph disappeared beneath the waves. The deception had begun. Now it was up to the Spanish fishermen, the Spanish authorities, and ultimately the Germans themselves. At 9:30 a.m., José Antonio Rey Maria, a sardine fisherman, spotted something unusual floating near the shore. As his boat approached, his blood ran cold. It was a body, face down in the water, in full military uniform. Rey Maria hauled the corpse aboard and immediately headed for port, where he reported his grim discovery to the Spanish naval authorities. Within hours, the body was in the hands of the Spanish Navy at Huelva. The vice-consul's office was notified. The briefcase was noted. And just as British intelligence had predicted, word quickly reached the German Abwehr agents operating in the area. The Spanish conducted a cursory autopsy. The doctor, Eduardo del Torno, concluded the man had been in the water between 3 and 5 days and had died from asphyxiation due to drowning. Perfect. The Spanish military authorities examined the documents but, officially, were bound by neutrality to return them to the British. However, everyone knew Spanish military intelligence would share them with the Germans first. The question was, would they take the bait? British intelligence could only wait. In London, Montagu checked his secure telephone obsessively. Days passed with agonizing slowness. Had the deception worked, or had it been discovered? Karl Erich Kuhlenthal, the Abwehr's chief representative in Madrid, and received the copied documents on May 1st. His career had been damaged by previous intelligence failures. He desperately needed a success. When he read the documents, he believed he'd found one. Here was confirmation that the Allies planned to invade Greece and Sardinia, not Sicily. Kuhlenthal immediately sent a message to Berlin marked "absolutely reliable," but the German High Command was cautious. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, head of the Abwehr, ordered a thorough investigation. Was this elaborate British deception, or was it genuine intelligence gold? German forensic experts examined the documents. They studied the paper, the ink, the typewriter fonts. They checked the letterheads against known examples. They analyzed the writing style and compared signatures with authenticated samples. Every test came back positive. The documents were genuine. German intelligence then investigated Major William Martin himself. They contacted their sources in London. Did he exist? Was he really assigned to combined operations? Their sources confirmed, yes, a Major William Martin was listed in military records. The bank confirmed the overdraft notices. Everything checked out. It was too perfect to be false. Or was it too perfect to be true? The documents reached Hitler's desk on May 14th. The Führer studied them carefully. His military instincts told him Sicily was the logical target, but the captured documents seemed to prove the Allies thought Sicily was too obvious. They planned to invade Greece and Sardinia instead, using Sicily as a diversion. Hitler's paranoia worked in the Allies' favor. He believed the British were devious enough to mount such a deception, but he also believed his intelligence services had outsmarted them by capturing genuine documents. After hours of deliberation, Hitler made his decision. Führer Directive 48 inches went out across the Wehrmacht. Hitler ordered massive reinforcements to Greece and Sardinia. An entire panzer division was diverted from France to Greece. German troops were withdrawn from Sicily to reinforce the Balkans. Coastal defences in Greece were strengthened, minefields were expanded, E-boat flotillas were repositioned. Rommel himself was sent to Greece to oversee preparations. The strategic shift was exactly what the Allies had hoped for. Hitler had swallowed the bait completely. But in London, British intelligence still didn't know if their deception had worked. They needed confirmation. The answer came from Bletchley Park, Britain's code-breaking centre. Ultra-intercepts, decoded German messages, began revealing the truth. German commanders discussed the captured documents and the strategic implications. Messages showed troops being moved to Greece, references to Sardinia's defences being strengthened, and crucially, messages showing Sicily being downgraded as a priority. On May 14th, a decoded message sent from Berlin stated, "The genuineness of the captured documents is above suspicion." Montagu could barely contain his excitement. The impossible had happened. The Germans believed a dead homeless man was a Royal Marines major, and more incredibly, they believed his documents. When Churchill received the news, he sent a telegram to General Alexander. Mincemeat swallowed rod, line and sinker. The operation's success exceeded their wildest expectations. Hitler wasn't just cautious about Sicily, he'd actively stripped it of defences. The 1st Panzer Division, which would have devastated Allied landing forces, was now 1,000 miles away in Greece. German naval units had been repositioned. Even the Luftwaffe had moved fighter squadrons north. Sicily, the Allies' actual target, was now vulnerable. Operation Mincemeat had worked perfectly, but the ultimate test would come on July 10th, when real troops would storm real beaches. July 10th, 1943, Operation Husky commenced. 160,000 Allied troops stormed the beaches of Sicily. The landing forces braced for devastating German counterattacks, but they never came. The Germans were caught completely off guard. The defences were thin, the response was confused and delayed. American forces under General Patton and British forces under General Montgomery advanced rapidly. What should have been a bloodbath became a swift campaign. Within 38 days, Sicily was secured. Allied casualties were far lower than projected. Military historians estimate Operation Mincemeat saved thousands of lives. As Allied forces advanced through Sicily, captured German documents revealed the full extent of the deception's success. Wehrmacht commanders had genuinely believed Greece was the primary target. Defensive plans for Sicily had been downgraded. Reserve units had been held back. Even after the invasion began, Hitler remained convinced Sicily was a diversion and refused to send reinforcements, expecting the real invasion in Greece at any moment. Operation Mincemeat had created strategic paralysis at the highest levels of German command. One dead man with false documents had achieved what entire armies could not. The success of Operation Mincemeat remained secret for years. After the war, Ewan Montagu wrote The Man Who Never Was, revealing the operation to the world. Glyndwr Michael, the homeless man whose body changed history, was buried in Huelva with full military honours, his grave marked William Martin, Major, Royal Marines. For decades, his true identity remained classified. In 1996, the British government finally acknowledged Glyndwr Michael's real name. Today, his grave bears both identities, the man he was and the hero he became. Operation Mincemeat proved that in war, imagination could be as powerful as armies. It demonstrated that deception, when executed with meticulous attention to detail, could fool even the most suspicious minds. Major Martin never existed, yet his impact was real. His false documents saved real lives, and his story remains the gold standard for military deception, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't steel or explosives, but a well-crafted lie and the corpse to sell it. Operation Mincemeat's legacy extends far beyond World War II. It established principles of deception warfare, still taught in military academies today, create a complete, believable identity, include irrelevant authentic details, exploit enemy psychology, and always sweat the small stuff. Ewan Montagu and Charles Cholmondeley received recognition for their brilliance, but the true heroes were Glyndwr Michael, who gave meaning to his death, and the countless Allied soldiers who lived because of a homeless man's final service. In the annals of World War II, amid stories of great battles and heroic stands, the quietest victory might have been the most consequential, the corpse that saved Sicily.